January 1943, the Southwest Pacific. A critical theater in the evolving submarine war, the unexpected death of Admiral Bob English in a plane crash triggered a cascade of command changes within the U.S. submarine force. Admiral King, at the highest echelon, orchestrated these key appointments. Admiral Lockwood, ambitious for the role, was moved to command at Pearl Harbor. Admiral Christie, a man of strong convictions, was assigned to Perth Fremantle. But these reassignments were not without tension. Internal rivalries and perceived slights fueled animosity and complicated effective collaboration between these vital submarine commands. It was into this volatile environment that Jimmy Fife assumed command in Brisbane. Fife implemented a new and aggressive strategy he termed playing checkers. This approach centralized control of submarine movements, mirroring the U-boat tactics employed by Donitz in the Atlantic. However, the Pacific theater presented unique challenges and intelligence limitations that Fife's strategy appeared to disregard. Simultaneously, the Japanese suffered a critical blow. The loss of codebooks from their submarine I-1 triggered a Japanese cryptographic emergency. This created a temporary intelligence blackout for the Allies, significantly impacting USA code-breaking efforts. Despite this setback, Allied code-breaking achieved a monumental success on April 18, 1943. The loss of Admiral Yamamoto's plane, directly attributed to intercepted communications, dealt a severe blow to Japanese naval strategy and morale. This celebrated intelligence coup, however, would later obscure a darker truth emerging within the submarine force. Fife's playing checkers strategy, prioritizing aggressive action over thorough analysis, soon yielded tragic results. February 1943 became a grim month. 3 U.S. submarines, Amberjack, Grampus, and Triton were lost with all hands. A total of 214 officers and men vanished beneath the waves, their fates largely unexplained. The loss of the Argonaut followed, taking with her 105 officers and men, including her commander Jack Pierce. These disappearances served as stark evidence of the catastrophic failures inherent in Fife's demanding operational doctrine. The circumstances surrounding these losses were alarming. Admiral Christie, sidelined and deeply critical of the operational decisions, conducted his own private investigation. He noted, for instance, that for Grampus and Amberjack alone, 106 radio dispatches were sent, 46 of which detailed precise positions. Such extensive radio traffic raised serious questions about operational security and the vulnerability of USA's questions. Submarines to Japanese interception. Even acts of extraordinary heroism underscored the dangers of this operational style. Howard Gilmore, commander of Growler, became a legend for his sacrifice. In a daring engagement, Growler collided with a Japanese auxiliary gunboat, Hayasaki. Her bow bent 18 feet, rendering forward torpedo tubes useless. Despite his own mortal wounds, Gilmore issued his final legendary commands: "Clear the bridge, take her down." He gave his life to save his ship. Yet even this act of courage highlighted the extreme risks demanded by Fife's aggressive posture. The true significance of these losses was often obscured. For decades, the narrative tended to attribute them solely to the inevitable cost of war. However, newly examined records reveal a different truth. These were not just unavoidable tragedies. Admiral Al McCann conducted a hush-hush investigation into the submarine losses. His report, lacking transparency, prevented crucial lessons from being learned. McCann's later justification, suggesting the boats may have been sunk by our own aircraft, remained an unproven and convenient explanation for losses more likely attributable to enemy action resulting from compromised operational security. Christie's independent, critical findings stood in sharp contrast, underscoring the detrimental effects of intercommand rivalries and a command structure that prioritized aggressive action over thorough analysis and investigation. The narrative challenges the notion that Fife's aggressive approach was the only path to success. Instead, it reveals a period where flawed leadership and strategy, not merely the fog of war, led to significant and avoidable losses of skilled submariners and invaluable submarines. The cost of establishing rest and recuperation centres for the depleted force, approximately £85,000 Australian pounds, was a tangible measure of this profound strategic miscalculation. Early 1943. The Pacific's campaign was a crucible for both men and machines. Its effectiveness was a complex interplay of aggressive leadership, the persistent limitations of technology, and the grim realities of combat. At the heart of this evolving struggle were individual patrols, often serving as pivotal, sometimes controversial turning points. One such patrol in January 1943 would redefine operational boldness and significantly boost submarine force morale. The legendary voyage of the USS Wahoo under Commander Mush Morton. Morton, a charismatic and aggressive leader, transformed Wahoo Skill's reputation, fostering a sense of near invincibility among his crew. His executive officer, Dick O'Kane, would mature under pressure from what was described as adolescent petulance to a prime fighting machine. Morton's audacious tactics were unparalleled. He penetrated the heavily defended Wewak Harbor, a feat of extreme daring. With only a cheap school atlas and an ingeniously enlarged Navy chart, Wahoo reconnoitered the area, firing 6 torpedoes at a destroyer, scoring 1 hit. Later, in a convoy attack, Wahoo fired multiple torpedoes at 2 freighters, a transport, and a tanker. Her claimed sinkings totaled 5 ships for 32,000 tons. This patrol, returning to Pearl Harbor on February 7, 1943, provided a crucial morale boost to the entire submarine service, demonstrating the potential for decisive impact. Yet post-war analysis would significantly revise these claims, reducing confirmed sinkings to 3 ships for 11,300 cents to 3 ships for 11,300 cents. This discrepancy highlights the critical gap between immediate combat claims and meticulous historical accuracy, challenging the myth of unquestioned success. Despite Wahoo's triumphs, a persistent shadow loomed over the submarine force, the unreliability of its primary weapon. Torpedo reliability issues were rampant. Skippers reported duds and inconsistent performance, including a claimed dud against a Japanese submarine and another failing to explode against a transport. Commander Red Ramage of Trout engaged in heated disputes with Admiral Christie over these torpedo flaws, reflecting the deep skepticism among frontline commanders. Moke Milliken of Thresher also complained after sinking ships near Balikpapan. These technical deficiencies directly impacted attack success rates, leading to profound frustration and distrust among skippers. Meanwhile, strategic deployments were evolving. Admiral Fife, a key strategist, focused on the Palau-Rabaul convoy route. Between March and June, efforts along this route accounted for 18.5 confirmed Japanese ships. Brisbane patrols, from January to May 1943, mounted 25 war patrols, with 18.5 confirmed sinkings, but at the cost of 4 boats lost. Fremantle patrols during the same period executed 22 war patrols, producing 23 confirmed sinkings with 2 boats lost. These patrols often targeted key points, such as the equator line at longitude and 50 east, a critical intersection for Japanese convoys. However, not all strategic initiatives met with success. An early attempt to establish an advanced base at Exmouth Gulf, codenamed Potshot, proved disastrous. Admiral Christie had opposed the deployment, and his reservations proved accurate. On the night of May 20, 1943, a Japanese reconnaissance plane flew over Exmouth Gulf. Subsequently, 10 to 12 150-pound bombs were dropped near the anti-aircraft battery. The base quickly collapsed due to environmental challenges, and this early Japanese air reconnaissance highlighting the logistical and operational vulnerabilities of forward deployments. Attempts at coordinated wolf packs were also in their infancy. Initial uncoordinated efforts were hindered by a lack of tactical development and clear communication protocols. Yet, the successes and failures of these early attempts provided valuable lessons, informing the development of more effective coordinated strategies that would mature later in the war. The demands on skippers were immense. Some, like Rob Roy McGregor of Groper, were relieved of command after missed opportunities for coordinated attacks. Yet a critical shortage of qualified personnel meant that relieved skippers, like Spike Hottle, commander of Cuttlefish, were sometimes given a crucial second chance, later earning endorsements for aggressive first patrols. Don Donahoe of Flying Fish was renowned for relentlessly aggressive patrols, penetrating harbors like Guam and Tinian. Jack Lewis of Swordfish also received a second chance, though he later experienced damaging friendly strafing. but Oahu's celebrated patrol also ignited debates on the conduct of warfare. Morton's controversial engagement of survivors after a convoy attack raised profound ethical questions. With no clear policy directives from high command, differing interpretations persisted, a stark reminder of the moral complexities of total war. The strategic decisions around resource allocation were also contentious. The maintenance of the Brisbane base despite dwindling target availability and the potential for redeploying assets to Pearl Harbor illustrated the ongoing debates between immediate military logic and long-term strategic necessity. Ultimately, the period of January to May 1943 marked a critical juncture. It showcased the transforming power of aggressive leadership like Morton's, but also exposed the crippling limitations of unreliable torpedoes, the vulnerabilities of logistical experiments, and the profound human cost of a war fought with evolving tactics and imperfect tools. Even as the US's deft submarine force in the Pacific demonstrated remarkable courage and tactical innovation, it wrestled with profound systemic issues. These challenges, unreliable weaponry, critical shortages of submarines, and bureaucratic inefficiencies, severely hampered the campaign against Japan. A critical shortage of submarines was an immediate impediment. Fleet boats were diverted to Brisbane and even to Scotland, reducing available assets. Engine failures in Squadron 12 boats further compounded the problem, limiting operational readiness. In 1942, the Bureau of Ordnance manufactured only 2,000 submarine torpedoes, a number utterly insufficient to cover expenditures, with 1442 fired by the three submarine commands alone. The most crippling issue, however, was the persistent unreliability of the torpedoes themselves. Commander Ramage, among others, repeatedly complained about poor torpedo performance. He faced criticism for misses and was even considered for relief due to these repeated failures. Barney Seaglaff of the USS Tautog, whose patrol in February 1943 included laying mines that later sank the Japanese destroyer Amagiri, also encountered technical issues with his vessel's new 5-inch gun, which jammed in operation. The Mark 14's torpedo, though praised by some like Bill Post of Gudgeon, remained controversial. Many skippers favored deactivating its magnetic exploder due to suspected unreliability, forcing reliance on the contact exploder, which proved equally problematic. The promising Mark the 18th electric torpedo faced severe development delays, mired in bureaucratic not-invented-here attitudes, and a lack of dedicated experienced personnel within the Bureau of Ordnance and the Newport Torpedo Station. Despite these handicaps, individual commanders achieved remarkable feats. Bill Post, commanding the USS Gudgeon, was the highest-scoring Fremantle boat in early 1943, earning a Navy Cross. He famously sank the 17,500-ton liner Kamakura Maru with an up-the-kilt shot, the largest ship sunk by U.S. submarines to that time. Post's confirmed shipping sunk in 2 patrols on Gudgeon totaled 39,000 tons, though even his impressive score was later slightly revised from Lockwood's initial credit of 19,600 tons to 15,000 tons for one patrol in post-war accounting. These successes, the text reveals, were achieved despite systemic handicaps, not because of a universally potent force. The human cost of these operational failures was immense. On April 21, 1943, Commander John Fitzgerald, leading aggressive patrols in the challenging waters of the Malacca Strait aboard the USS Grenadier, faced disaster. His boat was severely damaged by a bomb, forcing her to depths between 130 and 270 feet, her hull bashed in by 4 inches. The crew attempted a desperate journey to shore, but Grenadier was ultimately scuttled. Fitzgerald and his men endured brutal Japanese interrogation, a testament to the resilience of crews under extreme duress. Back at Pearl Harbor, Admiral Charles Lockwood returned in January 1943 to a spirit of confidence, but quickly assessed the submarine command's credits and debits over a grueling 24-hour period. He soon unloaded his profound concerns about torpedo performance to high command. These persistent failures, exemplified by multiple duds and misses, forced a confrontation with the Bureau of Ordnance. Amidst these struggles, an unsung advantage emerged, the quiet triumph of intelligence. The Joint Intelligence Center under Roscoe Hilenkoweta and Frupak, commanded by Bill Goggins, were vital to code-breaking success. Henry M. Shee, M.D. Anthony, a Coast Guard officer and expert in Japanese merchant marine codes, commanded a new 75-person merchant marine decoding unit at Frupak. This unit provided actionable intelligence that, despite operational limitations, significantly aided submarine patrols, with figures like Jasper Holmes and Dick Voge relaying critical information to submarines at sea. A critical turning point in addressing the torpedo crisis came with the Kirk Reichmender. Oliver Kirk and Eli Thomas Reich from the USS La Panne exposed the stagnation of the Mark 15 torpedo's development. This detailed memo acted as a catalyst for an official investigation. Admirals Edwards and King received the memorandum, prompting a crucial dialogue between Submarine Command and the Bureau of Ordnance. Spike Blandy, chief of the Bureau of Ordnance, initially defensive, ultimately became receptive to Lockwood's concerns and the weight of the memorandum. The Casablanca Conference in January 1943, while setting broader Pacific strategy, had implicitly highlighted the underutilization of submarines, offering them only a vague role. The strategic discussions revealed that the pivotal role submarines would eventually play in strangling Japan was not yet fully recognized or prioritized. Yet, the intense scrutiny and eventual intervention prompted by the Kirk-Reich Memorandum began to bridge the gap between the submarine force and the Bureau of Ordnance, setting the stage for future improvements. The success of the Frupak Intelligence Unit, with its merchant marine decoding section, demonstrated that strategic advantage could be gained through information warfare, even when hardware lagged behind. The disappearance of the USS Grayling in August 1943, after delivering supplies to guerrillas on Panay, served as a poignant reminder of the persistent dangers, even as the force struggled to equip its sailors with fully reliable weapons. The early months of 1943 at Pearl Harbor marked a critical period for American submarine operations. The U.S. submarine operations, the U.S. Navy faced significant interlocking challenges, a crippling shortage of vital ultra-intelligence and pervasive unresolved doubts about torpedo reliability. These fundamental flaws hampered effectiveness, even amidst the bravery and innovation of individual crews. The strategic landscape was suddenly obscured. February 1943 saw a Japanese code switchover, leading directly to a shortage of ultras. This intelligence blackout severely impacted operational planning and the ability to identify targets. Furthermore, submarines diverted for overhaul to Brisbane further reduced the numbers available for patrols. Despite these limitations, Pearl Harbor mounted 28 patrols in the first 3 months of 1943, 16 focused on Truk, Palau, and the Marianas, with 12 targeting the Vital Empire and East China Sea waters. The consequences of intelligence gaps were immediate and stark. In February 1943, Soviet shipping was rerouted, leading to a near disaster. On February 17, Commander Eugene Thomas Sands, aboard the USS Sawfish, mistook and sank 2 Soviet ships, the Ilmen and the Kola, a tragic outcome highlighting the critical need for better intelligence and clear identification protocols. The Soviets subsequently improved recognition markings and provided better traffic information. The hazards of combat were equally unforgiving. Commander Rebel Lawrence of the USS Kingfish suffered severe damage from depth charges in a near-fatal encounter, enduring 16 hours of sustained attack. The Kingfish episode led to extensive repairs and a period of introspection for her crew. Compounding these dangers, the USS Haddock, under Commander Roy Davenport, experienced a near implosion at 415 feet, with the hair-raising sight of her conning tower visibly moving inward. This incident exposed fundamental construction errors and design flaws in newer submarines, requiring extensive overhaul. But the most persistent and frustrating problem remained the torpedo exploders. Premature detonations and outright duds, especially with the magnetic exploder, were repeatedly reported. On April 8, Commander John Addison Scott of the USS Tunney conducted a bold surface attack on Japanese carriers, firing 10 torpedoes. This classic of the war attack, despite initial elation, was marred by persistent torpedo exploder failures, confirming the critical unreliability of the weapons. This systemic failure to definitively address torpedo exploder issues, despite ample evidence, led to continued disappointing patrol results. Admiral Willis Thomas, commander of Pompano, also engaged a Japanese carrier and experienced these frustrating prematures. Admiral Lockwood, commander at Pearl Harbor, faced these constant reports of torpedo failures and growing command disputes. His counterpart, Admiral Ralph Christie, responsible for Brisbane operations, engaged in heated exchanges with Lockwood over torpedo reliability, underscoring a profound systemic failure. Amidst these struggles, the strategic importance of the Aleutians also came into sharp focus. On March 10th, the first Japanese convoy, escorted by the Fifth Fleet, arrived in the Aleutians. By late March, the Komandorski Islands battle pitted the Japanese Fifth Fleet, including heavy cruisers Maya and Nachi, against a U.S. force featuring the heavy cruiser Salt Lake City. These engagements, demonstrating the risks of surface confrontations with superior Japanese forces, contributed to Japan's consideration of invading Hokkaido following the Attu invasion on May 12. Despite the widespread problems, a few patrols achieved notable success. Commander Thomas Wogan of the USS Tarpon, using his SJ radar to pick up contacts after a storm, achieved significant tonnage with 2 successful attacks, sinking the 10 935-ton Fushimi Maru and the 16 90-75-ton Tatsuta Maru. Mushmorton, in the USS Wahoo, achieved a record 9 confirmed ship sinkings for about 20,000 confirmed tons on a single patrol in the Yellow Sea. Yet, even these impressive scores implicitly challenged the idea that all submarine successes were due to perfect execution. Official credit for sinkings was often inflated compared to post-war analysis, revealing that the hard-won victories were often achieved against formidable odds and equipment deficiencies. Pearl Harbor's early 1943 was a period of intense learning and struggle. It highlighted the urgent need for improved intelligence, reliable weaponry, and robust submarine design, even as the bravery and persistence of U.S. submariners began to turn the tide. May to August 1943. The Pacific War demanded unprecedented performance from the U.S. submarine force. This period was a complex interplay of individual skipper talent, persistent technological challenges, and the strategic decisions of naval command. It marked a transition from early war struggles to developing expertise, yet revealed persistent flaws that hampered the force's full potential. A significant impediment to combat readiness was the unreliability of the experimental HOR engines. These new engines, fitted in Squadron 12 submarines like the USS Harder, had a rather smelly history. They caused significant downtime and led to long periods of immobility. Harder herself returned from her first patrol with 1 engine out of commission, and on her second was loaded with spare engine parts. Admiral King ultimately ordered the replacement of these engines with more reliable Winton engines after the Squadron 12 boats returned to Mare Island. As Commander Tommy Dykers once observed, the HOR engines saved the Japanese 30 or 40 ships. The submarine force also grappled with the critical issue of command decisions on skippers. Admiral Lockwood, commander at Pearl Harbor, faced a shortage of qualified men. He expressed concerns about a surplus of mediocre commanders and adopted a cautious approach to assignments, prioritizing experience over potentially more aggressive, but less proven, younger officers. This stance, while understandable, could be seen as an impediment to maximizing offensive impact. Persistent torpedo malfunctions remained a crippling problem. Prematured torpedoes, failures to detonate, and erratic performance were frequently reported. The continued activation of the magnetic exploder, despite mounting evidence of its unreliability, led directly to missed opportunities and reduced effectiveness, even amidst aggressive attacks. Yet, this era also witnessed the emergence of highly skilled and aggressive submarine commanders, who, despite technical setbacks, became instrumental to the eventual Allied victory. Samuel David Dealey, commander of Harder, a former Naval Academy student who had struggled academically, developed the vision and mind of an artist in his attacks. His executive officer, John Howard Maurer, and third officer, Frank Curtis Lynch Jr., nicknamed Tiny, were critical to his success, with Lynch proving crucial in extricating Harder from the mud after a photometer error caused her to crash into the bottom. On June 21, 1943, Dealey launched his first attack off Honshu, leading to the sinking of the 7,000-ton Sagadra Maru on June 23. He claimed 15,000 tons for his first patrol and 25,000 for his second, though these figures would later be adjusted in post-war analysis. Chuck Treble, skipper of Snook, known for caperers ashore but extraordinarily competent at sea, exemplified aggressive skill. On June 24th, on Bekins of their Dissecurit, 1943, he attacked a convoy, damaging the 17,600-ton whale factory tanker Nissan Maru and sinking two other ships, the 5 200-ton Koki Maru and the 5 800-ton Liverpool Maru. Treble's credited sinkings over 3 patrols totaled 42,000 tons, though post-war confirmations reduced this to 7 ships. His Snook was among the first to receive a new gadget, the Plan Position Indicator, or PPI, for radar, which translated radar pulses into a picture for better target visualization. Anthony Henry Drop, skipper of Sari, described as cold and calculating, demonstrated courage. On July 30, 1943, Drop sank the 4 700-ton Ryazan Maru, though Sari herself was struck by a destroyer during the engagement. Royce Lawrence Gross of Seawolf, despite facing significant torpedo malfunctions, engaged in a dogged 48-hour running battle on August 29, 1943, sinking 2 ships, patrol boat Non Por, 39 at 750 tons, and the 4 739-ton Shojin Maru. John Augustine Tyree Jr., skipper of Finback, a classmate of Roy Davenport of Haddock, reported 5 prematures and other torpedo issues, underscoring the frustrating realities of combat. Bafford Edward Llewellyn, skipper of Pollack, brought a new aggressive spirit to his boat. On August 6, 1943, Pollack experienced a tremendous explosion during a convoy attack, sinking the 5 350-ton Bangkok Maru, which carried 1,000 tons of supplies. Its loss significantly impacted Japanese reinforcement efforts. This period also saw a re-evaluation of torpedo tactics. Lockwood's growing frustration with the persistent magnetic exploder issue, contrasted with Christie's insistence on its use, highlighted an ongoing strategic debate about weapon reliability versus perceived offensive advantage. The successful sinkings directly disrupted Japanese logistics, while the consistent reporting of torpedo and engine failures underscored the critical need for technological improvement and reliable equipment. The narrative of this time moves beyond a simplistic view of submarine warfare. It details the intricate successes and failures, showing that effectiveness was not uniform and often depended on specific circumstances and individuals. This complex reality, punctuated by the immense effort and risk involved in each successful patrol, against the backdrop of weapon failures and the loss of potential targets, forged the elite crews and commanders who would eventually achieve victory. Mid-1943, the brutal realities of submarine warfare in the Pacific demanded not only courage, but also unwavering competence. This period marked critical turning points, highlighting the profound impact of individual command decisions, persistent technical limitations, and the steep learning curve for both crews and leadership. The pressure on commanding officers was immense, leading to a proactive approach to identifying and rectifying weak links in command. Commander Peterson of the USS Sunfish exemplified these struggles. His third patrol, lasting 57 days, yielded inconsistent results. Admiral Lockwood, the commander of the Pacific Submarine Fleet, expressed his concerns in a June 27 letter, with Peterson's credited sinkings of 29,100 tons contrasting sharply with a post-war confirmation of only 2,000 tons. This stark difference revealed the challenges of wartime assessment versus meticulous historical analysis, subtly debunking the idea of uniformly successful patrols. Peterson's command was debated, and later, with the presence of Officer Fred Conaway, Sunfish patrol success improved. On September 3, Sunfish sank the 4 180-ton freighter Kazan Mati LL. Ultimately, Peterson was relieved. Other commanders faced similar fates. Edward Carmick, skipper of Sargo, was relieved of command due to poor performance and an unfortunate miscalculation of fuel. Leading to his early departure from station, Howard Fletcher Stoner, commander of Skipjack, suffered relief after 2 unproductive patrols, including running aground. These consistent reliefs underscored the high stakes and unforgiving nature of submarine warfare, where performance was rigorously assessed. A dramatic clash of command philosophies played out on the USS Seahorse. Skipper Don McGregor adhered to a cautious approach, believing that attacking convoys with destroyers and supersonic sonar gear was suicidal. His executive officer, Slade Cutter, held a different view, arguing for more aggressive tactics. This dispute, rooted in a hooligan Navy mindset versus technological caution, resulted in McGregor's relief and Cutter's extraordinary promotion to command, a pivotal moment where junior officer insight and courage were recognized. Cutter reported 33 ships passing unnoticed by Seahorse, highlighting McGregor's perceived lack of aggressiveness. Tragedy also struck. William Naylor Wiley, skipper of Scorpion, made what seemed a perfect attack in the Yellow Sea on July 3, only to strike bottom, damaging sonar heads. His brilliant executive officer, Reginald Marbury Raymond, was killed in action on Scorpion's bridge by enemy gunfire during the boat's first patrol. This devastating loss profoundly affected crew morale and subsequent operational decisions. Wiley later ran Scorpion aground on a reef at Midway, leading to a court-martial recommendations and his own relief. Despite these challenges, the development of submarine tactics and technology continued. A new device, the bathythermograph, which measured water temperature to help submarines evade detection by finding thermoclines, was being introduced. Yet, technical flaws persisted. The SJ radar, essential for night surface attacks, was disabled on permit when a wave pooped the conning tower, flooding it and severely hampering operations. A significant shift in offensive strategy came with the establishment of the Sea of Japan as a new operational theater, driven by intelligence and the desire to exploit new avenues. A hit-and-run assault strategy was proposed. On July 4, 1943, the submarines Plunger, Permit, and Lepon entered the Sea of Japan. Raymond Henry Benny Bass, commander of Plunger and an Olympic gold medalist gymnast, was known for aggressive tactics. He claimed 24,000 tons, later confirmed as 15,000 tons post-war. Moon Chapel, commander of Permit, was known for courage, but his patrol was plagued by an epidemic of food poisoning and a controversial incident where he mistook a Russian fishing trawler for a Japanese patrol vessel, leading to casualties and a diplomatic incident. Oliver Kirk, commander of Lapom, found his patrol unproductive, hampered by fog and radar issues. Babe Brown, the oldest officer to make a patrol, commanded Narwhal and flew his flag for the Sea of Japan operation, which also included a diversionary bombardment of Matsuwa, 2 in the Karahi Islands. Despite high expectations, the first 2 forays into the Sea of Japan yielded mixed results. The immense cost of war was tragically underscored by the loss of multiple submarines in the same hazardous area. Admiral Lockwood lost 3 submarines between April and August. The Runner and Pompano were both lost in the same minefield area off northeast Honshu. Willis Thomas, skipper of Pompano, had experienced numerous torpedo misses during his patrol in July. His boat, before its loss, had sunk the 5 600-ton Akamaru and the 3 000-ton Taiko Maru. The repeated losses in this zone led to a strategic decision to avoid that specific operational area, demonstrating a reactive adjustment to persistent operational hazards. The narrative from this period challenges the notion that all patrols were uniformly successful. Instead, it offers a nuanced picture of wartime operations, where command changes were often a result of evolving standards, tactical disagreements, or tragic accidents, and where even initially understated assessments could be corrected by post-war confirmation, as with Pompano sinking. It was a period of harsh lessons, but also of crucial adaptation. The early stages of the Pacific Submarine War were characterized by significant challenges and setbacks. This was particularly true in the ambitious forays into the Sea of Japan and along the vital Brisbane operational lines. A combination of flawed torpedo technology, persistent command and coordination issues, and the evolving Japanese defensive capabilities ultimately led to a period of critical re-evaluation and adaptation. Initial attempts to penetrate the strategically important Sea of Japan were met with daunting obstacles. On August 14th, Benny Bass and Mush Morton were programmed to go through the perilous La Perouse Strait. Morton, renowned for his aggressive tactics, developed a single torpedo concept for his Sea of Japan patrol. However, his attacks on August 15, 17 and 18 proved unsuccessful, leading to a 0 run. He withdrew from the Sea of Japan on August 19. Bass, despite achieving more success with 3 ships, sunk for 10 500 tons, also experienced torpedo failures in his attacks on August 17, 18, 2020, and 22. The first two forays into this heavily defended region yielded a total of only 5 confirmed ships, sunk for 13,500 tons. These disappointing results, hampered by poor visibility, including fog, and accurate Japanese coastal defenses, marked a significant realization of the profound challenges involved. A critical factor in the underperformance of submarines was the widespread and persistent failure of torpedo exploders, specifically the Mark VI, repeatedly cited as a source of failure. This exploder caused premature explosions and duds. William Kinsella, executive officer of Blackfish, described the confusion and operational impact of inactivating torpedo exploders. Even new weapons, like the Mark 18th electric torpedo, were being brought into service, but their effectiveness was still under scrutiny. Command and control issues further complicated operations. Jimmy Fife, commander in Brisbane, was responsible for directing patrols and dealing with operational challenges and skipper issues. During the second half of 1943, the Brisbane force consisted of about 12 submarines, sending an average of 5 boats out per month. Admiral Ralph Christie, advocating for a reversed distribution of submarines between Fremantle and Brisbane, ultimately succeeded in increasing the total number of Australian-based submarines. This organizational shift represented an effort to optimize operational effectiveness and address the tangled relationships between different branches of the Navy and Army. Despite the challenges, the increasing reliance on ultra-intelligence was crucial for locating targets. However, its effectiveness depended on better coordinated attacks. The move towards more cooperative efforts, even if not formal wolf packs, demonstrated a crucial shift in tactical thinking. Advanced refueling facilities enabled double-barreled war patrols, allowing for extended operations. November 1943 saw a clear demonstration of this evolving cooperation. During a single convoy action from Palau to Rabaul, 4 boats, Gato, Pito, Rayton, and Ray, Dito sank 4 out of 5 ships. On November 28, Davis of Rayton alone sank 2 freighters from this convoy. These successes acknowledged that combined firepower was more effective against well-escorted convoys. Friendly fire incidents, where Allied aircraft bombed their own submarines, added another layer of danger. The USS Albacore, for instance, was bombed by Allied aircraft on both November 8 and 12. These incidents created a climate of fear and highlighted the urgent need for improved identification protocols. Earlier, on July 27, Ebert of Blackfish had encountered and sunk the Japanese I-class submarine, I-24, a hard-won victory. The period signified a crucial learning phase, for the US signified a crucial learning phase. Submarine force. The early failures underscored the critical need for technological improvements, particularly in torpedo reliability, which would eventually lead to better performance. The experiences in the Sea of Japan and Australia led to a reassessment of submarine tactics and the importance of torpedo spreads over single shots. These challenges, including those faced by Palau, which suffered a crankcase explosion on August 11 after unsuccessful attacks, highlighted the necessity of clearer command structures and better inter-service coordination. The narrative challenges the idea of immediate, unmitigated success for Allied submarines, emphasizing instead the significant struggles and setbacks that ultimately paved the way for more successful operations in later stages of the war. The efficacy of American submarine warfare in the Pacific against Japanese shipping was significantly hampered by persistent technical issues with torpedoes and a reluctance to fully adopt coordinated wolfpack tactics. Despite early, promising examples of their success, these systemic challenges limited the strategic impact of the submarine campaign. At the core of the problem lay the flawed Mark 14 torpedoes, the persistent failure of the magnetic explodeur, known as the Pi.2, and the frequent occurrence of premature runs directly undermined the effectiveness of submarine attacks. This led to countless missed opportunities and increased risk for already vulnerable crews. The Mark 14's warhead, 1,000 pounds lighter than its Japanese counterparts, offered a smaller explosive payload, further reducing its effectiveness. Compounding these issues was the inherent difficulty in sinking Japanese tankers. These vital vessels, carrying the lifeblood of Japan's war machine, were specifically designed for resilience, They were often well compartmented and capable of flooding compensating compartments, absorbing multiple torpedo hits without sinking. Though the volatility of Japanese crude oil made them susceptible to fire, achieving critical hits with unreliable torpedoes was a constant struggle. This late emphasis on targeting tankers, while strategically logical, presented a significant challenge. Despite anecdotal successes, a cultural resistance and a fear of friendly fire prevented the formal adoption of coordinated wolf-pack tactics. This limited the strategic impact of individual submarine patrols. Admiral Koga's fleet units, reliant on oil shipments from Borneo and Sumatra, were tempting targets, but achieving decisive results required more than individual daring. Commander Foley, aboard the USS Yamato, demonstrated extraordinary daring and unorthodox tactics. On December 20th, in an engagement with a two-ship convoy and escorts, Yamato sustained 19 close charges. Foley even fought off a plane in a daring surface battle and disposed of an unexploded depth charge from his ship. However, Admiral King expressed strong disapproval of Foley's battle with an airplane, a directive that reinforced a risk-averse doctrine and discouraged aggressive individual actions, even when successful. This influence stifled the organic development of innovative tactics. Yet the potential of cooperative tactics was undeniable. In December 1943, a cooperative attack by 3 other boats, Guardfish under Bub Ward, Scamp under Wally Ebert, and Albacore under James William Blanchard, successfully engaged tankers and a destroyer. Ebert's Scamp sank the 10,000-ton tanker Nippon Maru. Blanchard's Albacore endured 59 depth charges from a destroyer. Later, the Gato Peto Ray Rayton cooperative attack against a single 5-ship convoy resulted in 4 sinkings. This demonstrated the immense potential of boldness and mutual support among submarines, marking a significant, albeit underutilized, turning point for cooperative tactics. Individual commanders, however, continued to carve out impressive, if isolated, successes. Walt Griffith, skipper of the USS Bowfin, executed what was later dubbed the classic of all submarine patrols. On November 26, Griffith accidentally steamed into a Japanese tanker convoy. His aggressive patrol resulted in claimed sinkings of 14 vessels, 9 ships and 5 schooners for 71,000 tons. Post-war analysis trimmed this to a still impressive 26,028 confirmed. On November 11th, Griffith had attacked 2 small, unescorted tankers. This patrol served as a potent example of what was possible with daring and effective targeting. Other commanders also made their mark. Chester Nimitz, Jr., the Fleet Admiral's son, served as executive officer on the USS Bluefish, which on its first patrol sank 4 ships for 16,200 tons, including the 10 570-ton tanker Kyokyu Maru. Ed Hutchinson, skipper of the USS Rasher, demonstrated outstanding aggressiveness, sinking 4 ships. However, Willard Ross Lafon, new to command of Rasher, experienced premature torpedo runs, a persistent problem. Hank Munson of the USS Krivali, adopting an effective fire control technique, had a notable patrol, sinking the 67083-ton freighter Kyoko Maru, though his claim of disintegrating a large passenger cargo vessel was later disputed. The consequences of ineffective torpedoes and uncoordinated attacks were clear. They contributed to the Japanese ability to sustain their war effort longer than might have been possible with more decisive submarine action. The repeated failures and challenging engagements placed crews in extreme danger, with a reduced chance of success. The failure to fully embrace wolf-pack tactics meant that the full destructive potential of American submarines was not realized until later in the war. This period thus highlights the discrepancy between wartime claims and meticulous post-war analysis, underscoring the challenges of real-time battlefield assessment versus historical reconstruction. It was a period of undeniable heroism, but also one where systemic flaws delayed decisive impact. August to December 1943. This period marked a critical turning point in the Pacific War for the U.S. submarine force. While grappling with persistent technical challenges and severe losses, these submarines achieved increasingly significant strategic impacts, directly contributing to the eventual collapse of Japanese naval and merchant shipping capabilities. The strategic context was set by Admiral Chester Nimitz, who initiated the island-hopping campaign. On November 20th, 1943, U.S. forces, commanded by Admiral Raymond Spruance, landed on Tarawa and Makin in the Gilbert Islands. This costly campaign, while debated, provided invaluable experience for future amphibious operations and created vital opportunities for submarines to conduct reconnaissance, blockade, and interdict Japanese reinforcement efforts. Admiral Koga, the Japanese commander at Truk, struggled to counter these relentless U.S. advances. Despite the strategic importance, technological flaws persisted. The Mark VI magnetic exploder remained a key source of frustration and failure. Admiral Ralph Christie, spearheading operations from Fremantle, advocated for aggressive tactics but continually wrestled with these technological issues. His poignant diary entry captured the defeat. Today, the long, hard battle on the Mark VI magnetic feature ends with defeat. I am forced to inactivate all magnetic exploders. We are licked. This decision, though a defeat for its advocates, ultimately paved the way for greater reliance on and development of more reliable torpedo systems. The new Mark 18,000 electric torpedoes also arrived with bugs. Their slower speed and temperature sensitivity required extensive debugging and specialized training programs. The Mark 14th torpedo, though improved, still faced effectiveness issues, proving that reliability depended on multiple factors beyond the torpedo itself. This period also saw a diversification of submarine roles. Captain Frank Latta, commanding the USS Narwhal, demonstrated exceptional versatility and courage during a special mission to the Philippines. He delivered 10 commandos and 92 tons of cargo to Mindanao, then evaded destroyers with his heavily laden submarine. Her engines, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, pushed to their limits. Such mixed bags and special missions highlighted the force's adaptability beyond pure commerce raiding, including intelligence gathering, agent insertion, and rescue missions. The human cost remained profound. The unexplained loss of submarines like Capelin and Cisco underscored the extreme dangers and ongoing mysteries of the war. On December 1, 1943, encounters near the coast of Ceram between Capelin, Bonefish, and Bowfin preceded Capelin's disappearance. The oil continued to gush out from the sunken Cisco even on October 10th, a chilling detail illustrating the effectiveness of attacks on Japanese submarines. The psychological toll on crews was immense. Captain Marvin John Jensen of the USS Puffer experienced extreme psychological strain during a prolonged depth charging by Japanese torpedo boats. For 37 hours and 45 minutes, the Puffer remained submerged, the temperature inside reaching 125 degrees. Jensen later observed, the Warriors and the Hurriers had all crept out, leaving the plodders to bring home the ship. A stark description of the psychological breakdown experienced by his crew. Despite these devastating losses and technical setbacks, the strategic impact of the submarine campaign grew. The aggressive targeting of Japanese tankers had a direct and significant impact on Japan's dwindling fuel reserves. This contributed to the eventual collapse of its fleet, air arm, and merchant shipping. In the fall of 1943 alone, 43 ships were sunk, including 12 vital tankers. Ralph Christie credited Thomas Wesley Hogan's Bonefish with sinking 40,000 tons in one patrol, later adjusted to 24,000 tons. The increasing availability of ultra-intercepts provided crucial targeting information, allowing submarines to intercept vital Japanese convoys, particularly those carrying oil. The Japanese responded by organizing larger, better escorted convoys, necessitating greater fire and coordinated tactics from USMA submarines. This led to a crucial shift towards wolfpack tactics, a significant strategic evolution driven by the need for more firepower against fortified convoys and the availability of experienced personnel. This period definitively debunks the idea that submarine warfare was straightforward. It highlights the persistent problems with torpedo reliability and the profound courage required to fight with flawed equipment. While individual acts of bravery were ever present, the narrative emphasizes the critical role of intelligence, the limitations of technology, and the evolving strategy in the overall success or failure of patrols. The eventual deactivation of the Mark VI exploder signified, while innovative, it ultimately proved a problematic weapon system in practice. The cumulative successes and strategic impacts of the submarine campaign, despite setbacks and losses, fostered growing confidence in the force and its capabilities, laying the groundwork for the decisive victories to come. September to December 1943, this period saw a significant evolution in USA submarine warfare in the Pacific. It was marked by increasingly sophisticated intelligence, technological improvements, and the rise of younger, more aggressive commanders, despite persistent challenges with equipment and operational execution. This critical era laid the groundwork for decisive victories to come. At the heart of this evolution was the continuous provision of ultra intercepts. This vital intelligence directly guided submarines to high-value targets, transforming patrols from opportunistic hunting to precision strikes against enemy fleets and key supply lines. However, technological development was a double-edged sword. The introduction of new torpedoes, the Mark V-18, electric and the Mark XIV, created both opportunities and significant frustrations. The Mark V-18, while promising, was not yet debugged, leading to issues like fishtailing, failure to run, and general disappointment. The Mark XIV also continued to experience problems, including broaching and dud detonations. These persistent flaws led to missed kills and forced a rethinking of tactics. A generational shift in command also became evident. The assignment of younger, highly experienced officers, particularly from the Naval Academy class of 1935, to command positions led to a more aggressive and determined approach to submarine warfare. They challenged the more cautious methods of earlier war years, driving a new era of proactive engagement. Tragedy underscored the risks. The legendary skipper of Wahoo, Mush Morton, disappeared with his boat in the Sea of Japan. His final, aggressive patrols, including claimed sinkings of 4 ships for 13,000 tons, ultimately ended tragically. Japanese reports on October 5, 1943, noted the sinking of Komran Maru by Wahoo, and on October 11th, Japanese anti-submarine aircraft attacked a submarine in La Perouse Strait, believed to be Wahoo. His loss served as a stark reminder of the extreme dangers involved, and led to the cessation of forays into that particular area. Yet, the period was also defined by increasing successes directly attributed to U-ultra intelligence. U.S. submarines achieved significant sinkings of high-value Japanese naval assets and transports. On September 24, 1943, Douglas Thompson Hammond of Cabrilla achieved partial success against 2 escort carriers, though he was later relieved for lack of aggressiveness. On October 16, Ralph Clinton Red Lynch, Jr. of Mingo managed to damage a 17,500-ton aircraft carrier, despite his own boat being plagued by extreme danger from HOR engine problems. Dun Donahoe of Flying Fish was credited with damaging a carrier using early electric torpedoes on October 18th. The USS Gudgeon on November 9th attempted to attack a damaged carrier. These attacks demonstrated the power of combined intelligence and naval force. The legendary Roy Davenport, skipper of Haddock, reported remarkable sinkings of 8 ships for 71,000 tons off truck over 2 patrols. However, these impressive claims were largely unconfirmed by post-war Japanese records, highlighting the dramatic discrepancy between wartime reports and later historical verification. This challenges the notion that all claims were confirmed. Operational misunderstandings could also create lasting myths. The USS Trigger, under Dusty Dornin, achieved a highly successful patrol, sinking a ship on September 17th, despite dud torpedoes, and then another. His boat, along with Slade Cutter's Seahorse and Pete Galantin's Halibut, attacked the same convoy on November 1, 1943, resulting in 26,400 combined confirmed. Dornin's confirmed score for one patrol was 4 ships for 27,095 tons, and Cutter's Seahorse achieved one of the best war patrols with 5 ships for 27,579 tons. However, Trigger's for report of poaching Seahorse target was a junior staff error that created a lasting but false narrative within the submarine community. In the last 4 months of 1943, Pearl Harbor and Midway mounted 89 war patrols, accounting for 99 confirmed ships, sunk slightly better than 1 ship per war patrol. These patrols saw U.S. patrols submarines intercepting a Japanese task force on November 5th with halibut attacking it. On November 15th, Dace received ultra-intelligence on an enemy carrier. Eugene McKinney of Skate conducted a perilous lifeguard mission off Wake Island, resulting in the loss of an officer but the rescue of aviators. The German-made Primaflex camera was used for reconnaissance photography of Tarawa beaches, highlighting improvisation due to Navy-issue equipment failure. This period led to a significant increase in confirmed ship sinkings and tonnage. The pressure and opportunity of this era forged many of the U.S. Navy's top submarine aces, who developed and honed aggressive strategies. By targeting vital shipping and critical fleet units, these patrols contributed to the gradual strangulation of Japanese supply lines and naval power. The lessons learned, the technologies refined, and the commanders developed during this critical period provided the essential foundation for the overwhelming success of the U.S. submarine campaign in the later years of the war. This critical period set the stage for the intense battles and strategic shifts of the next phase of the war. Operation Galvanic, the audacious invasion of the Gilberts, demanded a comprehensive and multi-pronged submarine strategy. Submarines were tasked not merely with interdiction but with troop transport, lifeguard duties, and critical reconnaissance of Japanese defenses. The USS Nautilus, a behemoth of the fleet, was converted into a troop transport for this very purpose. On the night before the invasion of Abemama, she carried 78 men of Captain J.L. Jones's Marine Amphibious Reconnaissance Company. Yet, the fog of war was a dangerous companion. Nautilus found herself nose-to-nose with friendly ships, the Santa Fe and Ringgold. A dud shell from the Ringgold slammed into Nautilus, a stark reminder of the perils of misidentification and the inherent chaos of combat. Despite this near disaster, Nautilus executed her mission, her two 6-inch guns pounding Japanese defenses on Abemama. Though not without cost, 14 men were killed or wounded during her bombardment. These missions were increasingly guided by the unseen hand of intelligence. Dick Foge and his team worked tirelessly, deciphering Japanese communications, the crucial ultra-intercepts. This gave USA submarines an invaluable, often decisive, edge in anticipating and intercepting enemy movements. But even with Ultra's aid, the cost of this war remained terribly high. On November 16th, a grim milestone was reached. The USS Corvina was lost to a Japanese submarine, the I-176, an ironic reversal of roles and a somber marker of the escalating threat. Just 2 days later, another tragedy struck. The USS Sculpin, on patrol, was engaged by the destroyer Yamagumo. In a frantic dive, a depth gauge malfunction, attributed to Ensign W. and Cupid, May, Fielder, caused the boat to broach. She shot to the surface, exposed and vulnerable. The resulting damage was catastrophic. As the Sculpin sank, her senior officer, John Philip Cromwell, made a heroic and agonizing choice. Knowing he carried vital ultra-secrets, he refused to leave the ship, choosing to go down with her and protect the intelligence at all costs. Only 41 of the 84 officers and men survived, rescued by the very enemy they had hunted. The human cost of submarine warfare was laid bare. Yet, even in the face of such profound loss, the patrols continued. On November 28th, the USS Paddle encountered enemy cruisers and destroyers entering a lagoon, but engine issues, with her Hor engines, forced her back to Mar Island for replacement. The ongoing struggle with technological limitations and material casualties was a constant companion to the cruise. Then came a twist of fate, almost cinematic in its irony. On November 30th, 3 Japanese aircraft carriers, the Zueiho Chuyo, and Yonyo, departed truck. Aboard the Chudyo were the survivors of the USS Sculpin. On December 2nd, the USS Gunnell, commanded by McCain, picked up the carrier formation. The next day, December 3rd, in the midst of a typhoon, the USS Sailfish, under the command of Bob Ward, intercepted the force. Ward was a master of crew morale, implementing gimmicks like an ice cream machine and carpeting in the wardroom. He even brainwashed his crew about the perceived advantages of their thin-skinned boat over the thick-skinned newer models. His aggressive tactics, even in extreme weather, paid off. Ward fired, and the Japanese aircraft carrier Chuyo, a vessel of 20,000 tons, was sunk. It was a significant victory, and more profoundly, it carried the weight of poetic justice. The sailfish had, unknowingly, avenged the sculpin survivors trapped aboard. Ward's patrol was credited with 35,729 tons, sunking later confirmed at 29,571 tons. The success boosted American morale and underscored the psychological impact of submarine warfare. Elsewhere, the relentless pressure on Japanese shipping continued. The Thresher sank a 800-ton freighter off truck. The Apagon claimed a 3,000-ton freighter north of Ponape. Drum scored a hit on the 621-ton High Maro off truck, though her conning tower was almost crushed by a fierce depth-charge attack. Siravan sank a 10,000-ton tanker off Ponape. On December 7th, the USS Poggy, under Metcalf, intercepted a Japanese Navy auxiliary and submarine tender, skillfully sinking the tender. But the sheer audacity of the submarine campaign was perhaps best demonstrated by Commander Gene McKinney in the USS Skate. On December 21st, after sinking a 400-ton freighter, Skate received an ultra alert on the super battleship Yamato. This legendary vessel, a huge mound, as big as Alcatraz Island, was considered invulnerable. On December 25th, McKinney attacked. He fired 4 torpedoes, scoring 2 hits on the behemoth. While the Yamato did not sink, the damage inflicted and the very fact of the attack shattered the myth of Japanese capital ships' invincibility. It was a crucial psychological and strategic win. The new year brought no respite. On January 10th, the USS Seawolf, commanded by Gross, engaged a large convoy, displaying tenacious pursuit and multiple engagements, including gun attacks, sinking multiple vessels. 4 days later, Seawolf encountered and attacked another convoy. Gross's patrol claimed 23,361 tons, later confirmed at 25,793 tons, including shared credit. His reports even influenced the USS Wales' success, which sank the 5 870-ton Denmark Maru and the 4 800-ton Tawashima Maru. Even individual encounters were fraught with danger. The USS Silversides found herself face-to-face with a Japanese submarine, evading its torpedoes by combing the track. The disruption of Japanese reinforcements and the infliction of significant damage on their shipping directly contributed to the success of amphibious landings. The USS Swordfish, plagued by materiel casualties like valves stuck, unreliable radar, and noisy steering mechanisms, even suffering electrical fires, demonstrated the constant battle against technological limitations. Her commander, Barrows, faced such persistent issues, a nicked propeller, chattering rudder, and jammed stern planes, that he ultimately had to be relieved. His replacement, Carl Hensel, known as a demanding taskmaster, was viewed with apprehension by the crew. The year 1943 marked a critical turning point in the Pacific Submarine War. It transitioned from a period of learning to one where the U.S. held how their submarine force became a decisive weapon. However, this evolution was far from smooth. Early Wolfpack deployments, though conceptually sound, were initially hampered by poor communication and a flawed command structure. The first formal Pearl Harbor Wolfpack, led by Swede Momsen with the Shad, Cerro and Greyback, was deployed to the East China Sea near Okinawa. It aimed to exploit the tactical advantage of multiple boats, using TBS radio for communication, with one boat attacking, then trailing to reload, while others attacked from the flanks. Dave White in Cerro damaged one freighter from a 3-ship convoy. Moore, in Greyback, sank a 7,000-ton transport. McGregor, in Shad, fired 5 torpedoes at 3 or 4 heavy cruisers and possibly an escort carrier, scoring 3 hits. Greyback then sank another 7,000-ton transport. Moore and McGregor shared credit for the big transport, Fuji Maru, 9138 tons. Momsen's pack was initially credited with sinking 5 ships for 38,000 tons and damaging 8 ships for 63,000 tons. However, post-war analysis later reduced this to 3 confirmed sinkings for 23,500 tons. Johnny Moore in Greyback later sank the 300-ton destroyer Numakazi, part of his total of 4 ships for 10,000 tons on his second patrol. The second Wolfpack, under Freddie Warder, comprising Harder, Snook, and Pargo, also faced challenges. Sam Dealey in Harder sank a freighter that disintegrated after 3 torpedoes. Dealey then sank one of the small escorts with gunfire. He attacked 3 ships, scoring 7 hits, with 1 sinking, 1 badly damaged, and 1 running off. Yet, Harder suffered a complete breakdown of her No. 4 main engine, and HOR Warder and Eddy, on Pargo, attacked a convoy of 4 big freighters. Treble on Snook fired 6 torpedoes that hit a ship already struck by Eddy and another vessel. Treble was credited with sinking 2 ships and damaging 2, while Eddy received credit for sinking 2 ships and damaging 2, with shared credit for 1 damaged ship. This second Wolfpack was credited with sinking 9 ships for 58,000 tons, a figure later reduced to 7 ships for 31,100 tons. These early attempts at Wolfpack tactics were hampered by poor communications and the difficulties of coordinating multiple boats across vast distances, often leading to frustrations among skippers and a reduction in their claimed successes. Admiral Lockwood, the tireless champion of the submarine force, fought continuously for these tactical shifts, and the best officers even promoting Vice Admiral Sunshine Murray to his chief of staff. However, even Lockwood's influence had its limits, as Murray was later denied command of a new squadron in favor of an academic post. The third Wolfpack, composed of Halibut, Haddock, and Tullabee, set off in December 1943. But its sole success was Tullabee's sinking of a 500-ton net tender. Charles Brindubke, commanding Tullabee in the third Wolfpack, made first contact with the enemy on January 2, 1944. He later engaged a Japanese submarine and was attacked by a floatplane. Pete Galantin, in Halibut, attempted to attack enemy warships and a damaged carrier, Unyo, near Saipan. On January 14th, Galantin fired torpedoes, 2 or 3 of which prematured a recurring and infuriating problem. Beetle Roach, in Haddock, on January 19th, sighted an enemy task force at 20,000 yards, mistaking the carrier Unyo for the Shokaku, underscoring the difficulties of identifications. Bill Post, in Gudgeon, and Tony Drop, in Sowry, intercepted the damaged Unyo off Lowe's Wife on February 2, 1944, facing intense destroyer opposition. The initial ineffectiveness of these Wolfpacks led to a critical re-evaluation of tactics and command structures. Despite these struggles, improved intelligence from the increasing flow of ultraports on Japanese convoys and advancements in radar were making a difference. Most crucially, the Mark 14's torpedo, after years of frustration, was declared fixed in September 1943, and the notoriously unreliable Mark 6 magnetic exploder was deactivated by Lockwood and Christie in June 1943. However, the statistics still showed a higher expenditure of torpedoes per sinking in 1943 compared to 1942, suggesting that even the fixed torpedoes were still being refined in practice. Strategically, commanders like Lockwood, Christie, and Fife moved away from less effective tactics like port watching to focus on targeting shipping lanes and choke points. The two-road strategy for defeating Japan, pursuing both Nimitz's mid-Pacific advance and MacArthur's New Guinea drive, was confirmed by the combined chiefs of staff, solidifying the overall Allied approach. The growing success of USA submarines, despite their own challenges, led to intensified Japanese defensive measures. As a consequence, US accomplis, US South Indified, submarine losses more than doubled in the Pacific in 1943, a stark testament to the escalating nature of the conflict. By the end of 1943, US 723, US submarine attacks had significantly impeded Japanese shipping services, leading to a sharp drop in imports and a net loss of over 1 million tons of non-tanker shipping. The US of Mudday submarine tons of non-tanker shipping. Submarine force had evolved into a highly effective and increasingly decisive weapon, poised to play a critical role in the ultimate defeat of Japan.